Okay, we're at mission 12 in the T2X Commentary, and if you're still listening, we hope that you are enjoying this and hopefully getting some insight into how all this came about. This is our second undead map, The Cure, where we go to the creepy ruined hospital and encounter the zombies and some new undead enemies, and get to kind of play with the combustion arrows a little bit more. This map was originally worked on and kind of conceptualized by Gingerbread Man Alex, who, of course, we all know from the TTLG forums, and he had to leave. I think we'd mentioned before, he left the project after about a year just for personal reasons, and had a lot of responsibility. As we got into this, we had kind of the makings of a great mission, but there was just a lot of things that needed to be I guess, we just need to focus a little bit more and cut some things out and make some changes.
And decide which version we wanted to use, because we had several rough drafts. Yeah, I think the interesting thing is Gingerbread Man, like a lot of really talented, ambitious guys, really took on probably a little too much responsibility at the start of the project, because he was skilled in multiple areas. He was a mission designer and also was an artist. And also wanted to manage art, so he was kind of tied up on three fronts. He was doing some mission design for us, doing some art resources himself, and then trying to manage the artist as an art lead. Right. And that was really, at the time, I think, too much, and combined with all the personal stuff. Yeah. We really just had to part company after a year, which and we hated to do it, but it was the only way that I think everybody was going to stay sane at the time.
And he did come back a little bit at the end, not so much in contributing to the game itself, but he did the cover that's available on our website. The
a lot
DVD
of really great
cover.
Stuff. He wrote us a really
glowing
review. And flattering review. For TTLG, for the official TTLG review,
right.
And really helped us out a lot with the CD printouts and so forth when we were distributing our free CDs.
Kind of felt like he was there in spirit,
Yeah, he was there in spirit for a lot of it, but really we did an assessment of the art, I guess, after about a year, to kind of see where we were, and a lot of the art responsibilities ended up falling to me. I was kind of I kind of had become the content guy. About a year in is about the time when Fett and I guess, fell into project co-lead positions, and in addition to all of our other, inadvertently. But the art at that point was really it was almost kind of in as much crisis as sound was at that time, because we were good in certain areas and really lacking in others. I felt like we had one really spectacular texture set, which is the set for this mission, actually, the undead texture set for the Cure, but we didn't have any object models, really. We didn't have any new AI models. We had a bunch of kind of rogue texture artists that were taking textures from the web and or just not making very good textures to give to the rest of us, and so pretty much when I came on and responsibility came over, we pretty much just got rid of everybody, all the artists that were on there, but in a community and
in democratic kind of inclusive way, we fired them all.
In a happy way, we fired everybody. Yeah. Yeah,
that was one of those executive decisions where it's it's if this is going to succeed, we got to get some people that are actually going to get in here and do the work.
Yeah, I think we really just need a changing of the guard. We needed a new direction for the art, and we needed to get just some different faces in, I think, to really start cranking resources out. So at that point in time, I actually put mission design on the back burner, because a few of the talented mission guys were working away on maps at that point, and really shifted my focus in particular, I think, to art and to sound. And in this case, we'll talk about art since we've talked about sound a little bit in the past. So the first priority was really to get lists of things that we needed to get done, both objects and textures, and of course also AI models, and really get some good competent artists that could help start cranking those out. So first of all, we got on the model side, let's see, we got Von Eins right off the start, was one of the big community guys. He gave us 20 objects that he designed on his own, right off the bat, which was fantastic. It was really useful.
Also very encouraging.
Yeah, and also very
a lot
encouraging.
Of new stuff, and it was finally we're getting some stuff from the art
20
guys,
objects. We ended up having several hundred by the time we shipped, but just those first 20 were they were really inspiring. And we got a couple like really talented guys on board. We had Mud Shovel, who came on for a while at the beginning, and then he did a ton of stuff at the end, including our player arm art and our HUD and our light gem and all that, which was fantastic.
Right.
And then we had like Dan and Eric, who were two model guys who did just tons of our AI models, like all of our guard models and you know the beasts that you see in the last mission and just tons of those. And then we had other guys like Damonite and Dom and Muzzman who did skins and like little character tweaks here and there. And those were all really super useful too. So those resources just started pouring in as soon as we found those guys. And the same thing was kind of true of textures. You know, we found Adink, and Adink was really like a godsend as far as art, because he did everything. He did the metagame art and the map screens and, you know, textures, and he ended up doing like the carry icons and stuff like that for the patch. And you know, that really helped us out tremendously. We had John P. come on board at the end, who made tons of textures for us. And just a lot of other guys who made like, you know, one or two texture families along the way. But it was really just a matter of finding those guys and getting them to help out.
Right. And that was a real turning point too, because we were almost to the point, I think, especially with art, where we started feeling like, you know, we'd like to have all these new character models and weapons and all these things, but we may have to settle, you know, for you know, it's starting to occur to me that we may just have to go with what we've got, which is not a lot. And you know, then you start getting into thinking about, you know, cutting missions back and shortening the thing, which we just didn't want to do any of that. So when these guys started churning out stuff that we've been waiting for so long, it was just a real, again, just another shot in the arm. It was a good pick-me-up for the guys that, you know, some of us that have been there the whole time, had just been waiting on some of these things to show up. When they finally did, we felt like, okay, you know, good, we're going to be able to move on and really see, you know, get what we envisioned to happen here.
Yeah, that was a long time coming, and you know, we had to do a lot of individual work ourselves. Like I did a ton of the object modeling myself. I'm not really a texture guy, but I was able to do like a lot of the objects and a lot of the skins for them, and combined with all the work that the other guys were doing, I think we got by somehow and ended up with a lot more art resources than we even anticipated. You know,
Right.
So it took about 2 years or so, but eventually we got, I think, all the art resources that we needed to make the maps cool.
Right. And again, I think, you know, in speaking to maybe guys that are listening to this that are themselves working on a campaign with a team, you really have to have that long haul mentality. You've got to really take the long view and realize that even though maybe you've got some people on your team that are kind of slacking off or not coming through like they said they were going to, if you stay with it and you know, the community is big enough, if you stay with what you're doing and kind of stay true to your vision, hopefully eventually you'll end up with you know, with people seeing that you're serious about it and seeing the work that you have done and kind of throwing in with you and helping bring it along. You can't just really throw in the towel because the guys you started out with haven't come through. There's always more people, other people that will come in and help if you just look for them and be real, you know, just tenacious and finishing the project.
And one of the best pieces of advice there I can give is not to assign too much to any one person,
right,
you know,
exactly.
and to eliminate bottlenecks. You know, assign like just a couple things at a time and see how people deliver. And when you have a really crucial piece of art or sound that other departments are depending upon, you know, you want to make sure you give it to someone who has a proven track record.
Right.
Because like our biggest enemy, like in all departments, but especially I think in art, was just getting people who would not respond, you know, to email or would just not show up for weeks at a time. And it wasn't so much that they weren't doing work, but it was that they weren't communicating that they weren't doing work.
And so they may as well not have been doing the work as far as we knew. And so you're faced with either assign it to someone else or change what you intended to do and do something easier or just cut that all together. I mean, it really leaves you in a lurch kind of.
People don't realize either, like how much they're screwing you over by doing that, which sucks.
Right.
So you gotta kind of adapt,
huge,
and learn how to assign things out, learn how to delegate.
Yeah.
And we wanted to delegate a lot more, but you know we ended up doing a lot of low level stuff ourselves, which is too bad.
It's one of those things.
Yeah.
I was going to mention too, even though we're past it now, going back to the briefing for this. I don't know if anybody's mentioned it or not, but you probably would notice that anytime a lot of the artwork for the zombies on here, for the undead, the zombies don't look anything like what we're used to from the original briefings in the original games, and even what they look like in game. But here again, I mentioned earlier Randall Ernest, the guy that did some of the smuggler drawings and stuff for the brothel. He did the zombie stuff too, and he's never played the game, so really had not a real good idea of what what the look was for the zombies, and some of that stuff's a little bit over the top and a little, to me, is a little bit jarring because we're just not used to seeing that particular style in the briefings. But here again, it was a situation where, because we were so ambitious and had so much art to get done, we kind of had to go outside the community a couple of times, and he was one of those guys that was great about helping us fill in the gaps, but doing it without a lot of context of what the game was like, and kind of what Thief fans would be used to looking at and what would be familiar to them. Good artwork, just to me, sometimes it looks a little out of place in the briefings. But the guy, again, the team did a good job of kind of blending all that stuff and making it all look cohesive. So
yeah, exactly. As we mentioned in one of the earlier commentaries, as we started to get all these art resources, we started to make test maps and put them all in. And one of the other really useful things is to try to not make very many pieces that are specific to one location or one mission. Make pieces that you can use across at least 2 or 3 maps, and make pieces that are easily reskinnable. We did that in a couple cases where one of the artists made like a really nice table that we put in kind of our fancy locations, and then we just went and made a different texture and made it a little bit more rough around the edges, and then used some of that same geometry in our less nice maps, and so we got kind of like double use out of some of our art resources that way, and we still ended up, as I mentioned a lot, with a lot of art resources, but it did save us a little bit of time and a little bit of effort to do that.
Toolhead did all the text, the writings for this, and there was a considerable amount. We had the diary pages that had to be collected, and we're also trying to really kind of too late in the game for my taste, but we're trying to introduce the idea that of Zaya's religion, that she worshipped Linjala, and there's a connection here between the kind of the cult, the healing cult that occupied this place, and her her religion back home, and that Malik was kind of aware of that and was using it, and it was kind of late in the game to really bring that in, but it just didn't seem appropriate to address it anywhere else without it just feeling really contrived. So you kind of get caught up on that here in Toolhead. I think did a real good job of documenting all that and trying to convey that, and just in over one mission's period of just a short period of one mission. He didn't have a lot of time to really develop that, but I think he did a good job given the time constraint that he had here of just the one mission. So
here you get to see a bunch of the interconnectivity of the map.
Right.
It was important to again make this map exist on multiple levels. So you have like the street level, and then like some balcony levels, and then you have like the rooftops here. This actually has quite a few rooftops for an undead mission. I'm glad we were able to get these in. But we said in the very beginning, Gingerbread Man built some of the original drafts of this map, and really it was kind of interesting. He tried out a lot of different looks and themes. He built, I think, about half a dozen rough maps that were anywhere from 200 to 800 brushes, which were not complete maps, but were kind of incomplete test scenarios that tried out the textures and kind of the proportions and the look and feel, and they were all a little bit different, and they were all a little bit incomplete, and I think it was just an obsessive perfectionist way of trying to find the absolute best possible hospital that you could possibly present, as an undead map. And there were things that we liked about all of them, and but unfortunately none of them were very far along. They were literally just brushes and maybe a few objects placed here and there. So when he left the project and we had to take this over, we decided, first of all, to look at those and see if any of those early drafts of the mission were ones that we liked, and we actually ended up liking one that wasn't his final draft, but one I think that was his penultimate draft, which was this one here that we used as a base. And the reason that we liked it more than the others is because in this space it was a really good balance between the Ruin City section, where we felt there was some valid gameplay to be had, and it's really good for atmosphere, and the presentation of the hospital itself. You had this really nice big courtyard in the front, and then you had kind of a courtyard in the back with like another little building out back that at the time wasn't really fleshed out, but that we later developed into the church. And it just felt proportionally like this is the map that was going to work, that this is the one that we wanted to do.
Yeah. It had some work that we had to cut some things out of it. The hospital, like I said, was much bigger to begin with, and we had to just kind of pare it down. So that it wasn't just, because it could go on forever and ever.
Yeah, that was one of the things about this rough draft that we needed to change immediately, was to cut down in size, because although, it was mostly what you see here, it was really about, I would say, at least twice as big. There was more the opening city section, and there was more of the hospital. The hospital had just wings that went out like, ad infinitum, like in both directions. They're just huge, just massive. And just for pacing, we didn't really want that in this map, and we weren't really confining the player to this space or forcing them to solve any puzzle or find any keys the way that we were in some of the preceding maps. Really, players can play through this and once they find their way around, go right to the scales at the end, and we didn't really want to slow them down too much.
Right, because the plot-wise, we're really building toward the end.
Towards the climax here.
Well, there's one of our new bad guys right there.
Yeah, our soul elementals. And those guys pretty much came about just through us experimenting with Drom-Ed, basically. We liked the fire elementals. We felt they were kind of limited, not really very scary or creepy, but we kind of felt they had potential to be something a lot more. So basically we took like a rotted zombie head model and colored it. We made some particles for it, gave it an elementals AI, and put in a haunt voice, which is like the skeleton undead from Thief 1. We gave it that voice. And then gave it a couple of unique behaviors, gave it some missile attacks where it shoots some magic at you. And hell, it was a damn scary enemy that we could put in there.
Yeah.
And we felt they were appropriate for this undead map and not the earlier one, because they're very challenging. There's nothing you can blow them up with explosives, but they're very difficult to hit, and they're very small enemies.
They suck up a lot of resources too.
Yeah,
and it was another creative way of giving, in a sense, giving a zombie a ranged attack.
Yeah.
So
a zombie type enemy.
Yeah, zombie type enemy. You climb up in the rafters, they can still get you up there. I mean, you can't just get away from them easily like you can a zombie. Or even the puking zombies. I mean, they even have a more effective ranged attack than the barfing zombies. So,
yeah. And one of the things we did to make them less frustrating was introduce this fiction that they could possess dead zombie souls and resurrect them. So occasionally we have dead bodies on the ground, and the soul elementals will kind of suck up some of your life force and then appear next to the zombie and resurrect it, and it'll rise up from the ground. And we hope people would kind of make that connection, but if not, I think it's fine that they disappear and suddenly you have a zombie to deal with, because the zombie's not quite as threatening as the soul elemental is. We didn't want the soul elemental to just pelt the player mercilessly and kill them, and whenever they were discovered.
Right.
I thought this was really a little creepy invention of mine for some reason. Like,
you
go into a room and there's like a whole bunch of dead bodies on the ground, and none of them have any arms. And then you go into the next room and you open up a little secret safe, and then there's like all these arms in it.
Somebody who's saving them for later.
Yeah. Well, we made body parts. I mean, it's like we might as well use them.
Right. And this is I think one of the reasons this undead mission is, I've heard a lot of people say this was it's one of their favorite undead missions in the whole Thief canon, or whatever you want to call it. And I thought that the AI placement was really good in this, because you guys I worked on a little bit of the architecture, but I didn't have anything to do with the AI. But by the time you get in, I mean, they were distributed just enough that it was creepy. You had some quiet spots. It was just reminded again a lot of the Haunted Cathedral and some of those where it's not just a constant battling of zombies and running from zombies. Multitude of zombies isn't scary. What's scary is when you know they're out there, but you're not sure where they are, and there may be one around the next corner that's going to puke on you or whatever. And I think y'all did a pretty good job of balancing that in the placement of them.
Some real unpredictable elements in this map, especially with the soul elementals, and we brought back a kind of version of an apparition, which is basically just a ranged magic guy who happens to be undead. There's just a couple of those guys in this map. So just having variety of enemies in this kind of wide open, creepy location. It's very different from the Mausoleum. The Mausoleum is very claustrophobic and very confined, and you're in these tight spaces and caves. And here, it's the exact opposite. You're in these huge, like wide open spaces, and it just feels like inherently creepy, like a wasteland.
Right. And there's some obvious reasons why Moloch didn't want to go in here, but obviously, as we find out, he couldn't go in here to get the scales, which was his objective originally in taking Zaya in and training her and all that, is to as a build up to go into this environment to get these scales, and only an adherent to or a believer in Linjala could go in here and get this. And we kind of that was something that really kind of developed later. We were trying to figure out, why wouldn't Malik go in here to get this himself? Well, there's got to be some kind of supernatural reason why he couldn't do it. He's a pagan. You didn't want to have something protected by the hammers. We'd kind of already been there and done that in some of the original games. So it was, kind of necessary to come up with this religion that she was an adherent to this puking zombies. She's an adherent to this religion of her homeland, which we don't really get into a lot. It's just we felt like only important to know in so much as the player understands that only someone who is part of that religious group, or is familiar with that, or believes in that, or has been part of it, or whatever, can go in here to this place and get the scales that he wants. And that's been his objective the whole time. And accordingly, this mission probably was a little tougher with some of the AI and stuff than some of the previous ones. But this is what we've been building up to. So that's the reason for that. And, you're getting to use pretty much, using all your tools and weapons by now, and, all your jumping skills, all your climbing skills, everything that in the thief arsenal. She's got to really be at the top of her game to get in here, and there's some puzzles that have to be figured out. I mean, it's just kind of a little bit of all the things that, that we're familiar with in the thief gameplay.
It's again another opportunity for ice arrows.
Ice arrows.
Yeah, sometimes people forget about that there. They, try to jump to the ladder and don't realize they have ice arrows there.
And they're frustrated. They put the ladder out of reach.
Yeah. But anyway, and, like I was mentioning, we wanted a lot of places where you could get up high and really kind of look down and see things. This was really kind of the perfect opportunity to use this church here in the back. Originally, this building was nondescript in the original rough out drafts that we got. And we decided to make it kind of this old church. This was kind of like what are we making, an abandoned prison, I think. And then there was like a chapel in the back. And
ultimately, the healers that came, from foreign shores, which we know is from where Zaya's homeland came here. And we also we thought this was a good opportunity to tie into the cataclysm that's spoken of in the first game in the Dark Project, that happened in the old quarter where the zombies, the undead rose up. And of course we, again, felt like that was something that wasn't going to be revisited in Thief 3, whatever Iron Storm was going to do with it. They weren't really going to, but luckily didn't address that. So it allowed us to kind of come in and say, okay, well, everybody's wondering, what exactly happened. Well, we can now, kind of flesh that out a little bit and take some liberties with it and show that actually these healers, by uncovering what they did here and doing the things that they did with good intention, actually ended up causing that cataclysm that led to, you know, what we see in the haunted cathedral and Return to the Cathedral and all that. And again, just like with Truart and with the Cavador and some of these, we felt like that was pretty safe territory. That pretty much anything that, as long as it didn't deal with the keepers and or changed Garrett's,
or changed anything that might happen in the future.
It might happen, yeah. Then we felt like it was pretty much a safe bet, and again, it was just a nice way to tie it into the original games, and we tried to do that as much as possible without just it feeling too contrived. And again, I think Toolhead did a great job with the text in this, with the diary entries and all that kind of. Getting you into that headspace, and because I mean sometimes I would imagine some people by the time they got to playing T2X don't really remember a lot of the readables in the original game and about the cataclysm in the old quarter and that kind of thing. So it was kind of a challenge to remind them that had happened, and that was something that was part of the original mythology, and here's kind of the backstory now.
And if not everybody gets all the references, that's totally fine too. Because all the fiction that we wrote for this has relevance to what you're immediately seeing in front of you. So that's all fine.
But definitely wanted to try to tie it in
for the people who are paying attention.
Yeah, but in a classy way. Not in a contrived way where every readable's got some kind of in joke or reference. But just when it seemed appropriate, and this just seemed like an appropriate way to do it because the mission reminds you of those undead missions in the original, in the Dark Project, and everybody's always wondered. How did that happen? What was the cataclysm? What caused it? And
that was one of my favorite bits of fiction, I think, from Thief 1.
Yeah, it was a mystery. I mean, it was a really scary thing because you didn't know.
The idea of having this completely walled off section of the city that's completely burnt out and isolated, and that no one goes in because there's so many bad things that happen there. It's kind of terrifying,
And now, of course, Adis has to wade. Where am I getting these names from? Zaya has to wade right into the middle of that whole thing. So,
yeah. I think the thing that makes it scary for me is the fact that it takes place in an urban environment, because typically you think of horror as taking place in an isolated environment or out in the country somewhere, but in Thief, everything is in the city. It just happens to be this walled off section of the city that everyone walks by, but no one goes in because there are terrible things that happen there.
Yeah, and I guess it could be argued that maybe we shouldn't have messed with some of those things that were, I guess you could say Thief canon, that Looking Glass instigated, that we maybe took too many liberties to interpret them, but again, you got to remember at the time that we came up with the original plot to this, we didn't know there was going to be another Thief game, so we some of the stuff would have been in our version of Thief 3. We would have explained the cataclysm, we would have explained the keepers, we would have taken a lot more liberties, but because Iron Storm picked up the license and began to develop Thief 3, we had to back off from a lot of that, but some of it, and this is one of the things, was kind of retained. It was an idea that was retained from those original meetings of what we wanted to resolve if we made Thief 3. And we felt like this was something we could go ahead and still do, even though it was just an expansion now and a side story. Trying not to interfere. And of course, we'd ask Rain all the time, well, so what's the plot of Thief 3? Tell us if we're overstepping. Give us an outline. So, and he just laugh and send us on our way. But
yeah, we really wanted to make the release date in Beat 33 out the door. With T2X, we didn't quite make it. We came out the following year. Yeah. But, everything seemed to come together at kind of the right time. We had the cutscenes being done about the right time, right as we were entering really kind of a beta testing state for the project. And, I think we did kind of take our time and make sure that things were pretty polished at the end. We had about... a good 6 months of testing or so. A couple months of alpha and then a couple months of beta. Yeah. And we met the date that we said we would, though, when we announced that we were actually going to finish. So I was happy about that.
The things I remember about, it was kind of just a personal thing, but I remember when we were I was beta testing this mission in particular. I think we were on the final build of it, and my wife had gone into premature labor 4 months early, with our second child. And I remember just sitting kind of with her by my side and a lazy boy and me playing through this thing. She couldn't get up and do anything, but we were in crunch time. I mean, we were getting ready to release the thing, and it just had to be done. And she was real supportive about that. I think all of us who had girlfriends and wives kind of came to realize that T2X was a bit of a mistress that they were just going to have to tolerate until we saw it through. Especially two years into the process, they realized, well, okay, these guys really are going to do this, and they're not going to just give up because it's taking too long.
We had to stop lying, though. We had to say, yeah, baby, it'll be done next month. No worries.
Right.
Right about year 2 or 3, I think they kind of figured that out.
Well, what's funny is that when we first started working on it, my wife was pregnant with our first child, and I said, "Oh, we'll be done with this before the baby comes." And he was 3.5 or 4 years old, I think, when we were working on our second child. She was pregnant with our second child by the time, and so I started telling her again, "Oh, we'll be done before the baby comes." I've heard that before.
Yeah.
But they're just little things, you keep coming across in beta testing. It's like, man, we've been working on it this long. We're not just going to let that go. We really need to just take the time and fix it,
Yeah.
Especially
once, a lot of stuff
once Deadly Shadows came out, we kind of felt like, okay, we missed that deadline. There's really nothing else. There's really no rush now to get it out, other than just we were sick of messing with it and wanted to get done. But
surprisingly, I mean, it didn't seem to hurt us. If anything, I mean, it brought even more Thief fans in, I think, because we didn't release that far after, and there are a lot of people that were really anxious to see what we were going to pull off.
Well, I think you and I were talking earlier about there's a lot of anticipation of getting the SDK for Thief 3, but then whenever it was finally released, a lot of people realized that. Or for whatever reason, I haven't even looked at it, and I'm not much of a designer or anything. But a lot of people kind of went back to DROMED, to design to making T2
safer,
missions. It's safer, it's easier, we're more familiar with it, and so and I hate that in a way for the community, because it would be nice to see a lot more Thief 3 fan missions with that engine, the updated engine and capabilities. But at the same time, it kind of extended the life of T2X in a way.
Yeah, in a sense it did. Yeah.
Oh. Now we're inside. Are we inside the?
We're inside
we're in
the chapel here at the end. And so the player can run in here and grab the scales, and we felt that was a little bit too quick. So one of the gameplay ideas I had for the map was, instead of to just let the player escape really easily, just like let them get the scales really easily, but then seal them in and force this kind of gameplay scenario where there's new enemies that are introduced to the area and force them to do something before they can get out. And that actually worked out really well, because this is, it's very, it induces panic. I think it creates a very tense scenario where you're suddenly trapped in this room, and you have these scary haunts coming out who are tracking you down, and you have all this tile floor, and you're very vulnerable, and now there's no way out, and you're like, what the hell do I do? Like, where do I go?
Well, and it's weird, because a lot of people didn't think to jump in the water and look under, maybe they've been playing Thief 3 too much and didn't want to go in the water,
Yeah, ouch.
Sorry, man, I had to get that in there. But what I mean? It was weird how many people just were really stuck on this and didn't think. And I think I even did it in beta testing. I said, man, how in the world are we supposed to get out of this room?
Yeah,
and there's this huge probable will right underneath the platform there that if it was, man, Garrett would have looked. Garrett would have found that.
Looked,
I don't know what happened with Zaya. But
I mean, I got to accept some responsibility, though, for not making it more clear. I think if it was an engine that supported better dynamic lighting, I mean, we could add lights, streaming out of those the holes when they opened up. I mean, but the idea was really to trap the player in the space and to make him feel a little panicky and maybe to force him to look around, maybe
do some desperate things.
Yeah, do some desperate things, and maybe the players, the average player is going to deal with the haunts before they really get a chance to look around.
We should also mention, without totally giving it away, that
right in the back.
Our offices are actually located in this building. It was a real bitch coming out into that area there to get coffee every day, because these haunts would pop out. And but yeah, if you look hard enough around in there and do some climbing, you'll find the T2X offices where most of our corpses are located.
Yeah, just a little in joke. We kind of put ourselves like in the back of a rotted, haunted cathedral, just for the hell of it.
That's kind of what it felt like by the time we were done. Oh my God, get me out of here! Make it end.
But we got the second quote scroll back there. We actually had so many quotes. We needed two quote scrolls. Probably could have filled 2 more.
Oh yeah. It was a lot of really funny. Unfortunately, I lost a lot of the original chat logs in a hard drive crash. But oh my gosh, when you're up at 2 and 3 in the morning trying to figure out all these little plot details, people just get really silly, and you get some great quotes from some of those. I wish I still had the transcripts that we could release, just because it's good comedy. Some of it's really bad comedy, but pretty interesting nevertheless.
So here Zaya has all the goods that she needs to complete the map, and now she's got to get back outside. The one difference going back outside here is that once you kind of wake up the hospital and you fob that first wheel there, use the first green wheel, is that now all the zombies that you saw from earlier are awake, and it's no longer this kind of passive space. Now there are zombies that you got to get by when you go back. Which
is actually the opposite of what happened at the mausoleum. Once you killed Mausoleus, all the undead were dispatched, and now we've riled them up.
Yeah.
So, and I remember just briefly the plot team had talked about maybe solving the problem of the old quarter, and whatever she did here, kind of once and for all taking care of this problem of the undead and all that. But we just, again, there's
that's messing with the fiction.
It's messing with the fiction, and we were worried.
And it's too happy.
And we were worried we were going to step on the toes of T3 as well. So.